You are watching India Global with me, Parmeshwar Bava. This week, the US President made an unusual wartime trip as Israel and Hamas wage war. Now, worries are building that the conflict will escalate to engulf the wider Middle East. And of particular concern is the role of Israel's foe, Iran. We delve into India's stance on the ongoing war and also get you a wrap of all the latest developments in India's row with Canada, as well as Nawaz Sharif's return to Pakistan. A big focus on India Global this week. It's the first time that the United States has fired weapons during the war in Israel. A significant move that saw a US warship intercept 3 cruise missiles and several drones headed for Israel from Yemen. The target, the US says, was Israel, and if these weapons had struck their targets, it could have resulted in a further escalation of the current conflict. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden's quick visit to Israel was designed as a show of support for the close US ally, one that inspired confidence in Israel as it pursues its military campaign against Hamas in Gaza. His presence, it was thought, would calm things down, but that only addresses one side of the conflict. Now, if Joe Biden fails to do everything he can to curtail the violence currently, his visit may ultimately damage the United States' standing in the Middle East and its ability to lead in the world, as per analysts. My colleague Shrishti Shankar reports.
And the support of that peace. 75 years ago, to 20 trucks. This has been a very blunt negotiation I've had. And so we want to get as many of the trucks out as possible.
Disappointed that you had to cancel the stop in Jordan?
No, I'm disappointed. Look, I came to get something done. I got it done.
President Joe Biden on a defensive note. All the legwork done by Antony Blinken coming to naught. Even before touching down in Tel Aviv, he said Egypt had agreed to allow movement of aid into Gaza, but not a single aid truck has crossed over yet. Instead, Israeli tanks lined up at the Gaza border shortly after Biden left, and the UK Prime Minister touched down in Tel Aviv. So what exactly has Joe Biden got done? Prime Minister Netanyahu has dug in his heels on not allowing aid into Gaza till the hostages are released. And Hamas is steadfast on not releasing any hostages till there is a ceasefire. Palestine has been calling out what it terms as doublespeak by the United States for a while now.
The United States here is providing a very clear and shiny example of double standard. In the case of Ukraine, they are sending artillery, jet fighters, and to support what they say a fight of Ukraine against occupation. In our case, they are sending jet fighters and aircraft carriers and weapons to the occupier.
The attack on the Al Ahli hospital left Biden isolated in the Arab world too. Neither Egypt nor Jordan hosted him. Jordan cancelled Saturday's emergency summit. And in the world of diplomatic negotiations, having no truck with the other side is a zero-sum game. Turkey, Jordan and Qatar were playing mediator of sorts with Hamas on the hostage issue. Except for Qatar, the other two went silent about any kind of talks after the attack. The blame game over who fired the rocket meant nothing either, in the face of Palestine's claim of 500 dead. The fact is that the Palestinians in Gaza are the only ones paying a heavy price. Back home in the United States of America, protesters calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war descended on the US Capitol, and Biden's announcement of the $100 million aid package for Gaza and Israel has also drawn criticism.
We have 31 Americans killed. We don't know how many Americans are hostages. And we got a president that wants to give money to Gazans? Give me a break.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has also jumped into the mix, terming the attack on the hospital a terrible catastrophe. Russia is also sending aid to Gaza via the Red Crescent. Two United Nations Security Council resolutions on Gaza, the first by Russia and the second by Brazil, have been vetoed. On Wednesday, the United States of America blocked Brazil's resolution calling for humanitarian pauses to deliver life-saving aid to millions in Gaza on the grounds that it did not mention Israel's right of self-defense.
That the United States is
Russia and UK abstained from the vote. So where does all this leave Palestinians in Gaza? And has Joe Biden's forced balancing act in giving arms to Israel and aid to Gaza left the issue hanging in balance? Srishti Shankar for NDTV.
Meanwhile, speculation around Iran's involvement in Hamas's gruesome attack on Israel has been rampant over the past week, along with questions about whether the Islamic Republic or any of its regional proxies will get involved in the war between Israel and Hamas. Iran has denied involvement in planning the attack, but the country's supreme leader praised the slaughter in a televised address.
این کار خود فلسطینی هاست. طراحان هوشمند، جوانان شجاع، فعالان از جان گذشته توانستند این حماسه رو به وجود بیارن.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei hailing the planners of the brutal October 7 Hamas attack on Israel. An assault that killed at least 1,400 Israelis. Though Khamenei denied Iran's involvement in the attack, his statement set the ball rolling for the top Tehran officials to openly register their angst against Israel in the face of a brutal retaliatory airstrikes campaign which has killed thousands of civilians in Gaza. In the immediate aftermath of the Al Ahli hospital bombing in Gaza, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi called on Muslim countries to sever ties with Israel. A few days ago, Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian said that a preemptive action is expected anytime, adding that Israel will not be allowed to take any action in the Gaza Strip without facing consequences. Interestingly, officials from Iran and Hezbollah, an Iran-backed militia based in Lebanon, helped plan the Hamas attack, according to reports. However, the US and its allies have not found evidence directly linking Tehran. It is no secret that Iran supplies weapons and money to Hamas. Hezbollah is reported to have provided training to Hamas fighters. According to reports, Iran is moving some members of its elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps toward the Israeli border, sparking concerns of a new front opening. So what does this rhetoric from Iran mean? Iran is under pressure owing to several factors, such as massive anti-hijab protests last year and economic sanctions from US and its allies. The rhetoric from Iran leaders on the Palestinian cause could be aimed at regaining regional credentials. It can be recalled that Tehran has already restored ties with regional behemoth, Saudi Arabia. With US President Joe Biden's meeting with Arab leaders cancelled in protest at the ongoing Israeli military campaign against Gaza, Tehran could have an opportunity to exert its dominance in the Middle East. People in Iran have already started hitting the streets, rallying behind their leaders and shouting anti-Israeli slogans.
اسرائیل با شکست همه جانبه خودش حتی در صحنه‌های بین الملل میخواد این شکست خودش رو ترمیم کنه، اما این شکستی بود که به قول مقام معظم رهبری غیر قابل ترمیم هست و هرگز ترمیم نخواهد شد و میخواد مظلوم نمایی بکنه، در حالی که دلترین رژیم روی زمین همین اسرائیل و آمریکایی هستن.
With global powers Russia and China on the same page in condemning Israel, Iran could play a crucial role in the Israel-Gaza conflict. With Vishal Vivek, Usama Shah for NDTV.
Meanwhile, Xi Jinping met his internationally isolated Russian counterpart in Beijing on Wednesday against the backdrop of China's biggest diplomatic event of the year, underlining the close relationship between the two leaders amid the war in Ukraine. Now, the timing of this visit ran parallel to US President Joe Biden's trip to Tel Aviv amidst the Israel-Hamas war. Both leaders spoke of a deep friendship as well as a new world order based on deep trust. They also called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Is this the first step towards creating a fresh axis of power as both the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Hamas conflicts continue? Well, take a look at our report.
President Vladimir Putin and host Xi Jinping hailing each other as old and dear friends at the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation meet in Beijing. Both leaders patted each other's back for building a fairer, multipolar world based on deep trust. This reiteration of a new world order to counter the hegemony of the West played out as efforts to de-escalate the Israel-Gaza war saw President Joe Biden in Tel Aviv. Putin also voiced support for China on Taiwan-related issues, saying that there is only one China in the world and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Parallel to the two leaders meeting, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was in Pyongyang and China's special envoy was dialing leaders in the Middle East, offering a glimpse into a new world order with the pariahs of the West, China, Russia, Iran and North Korea, banding together. Russia has been playing peacemaker in the Israel-Gaza war. President Vladimir Putin has spoken to Benjamin Netanyahu, Mahmoud Abbas as well as Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. It is also sending aid to Gaza via the Red Crescent.
У меня создалось впечатление, что никто не хочет продолжения, развития и конфликта и усугубления ситуации. Вот, на мой взгляд, основные игроки. Кто-то по определению не хочет, кто-то чего-то опасается, но вот готовности к тому, чтобы развивать конфликт, превращать его в крупномасштабную войну.
China too has been calling for a binding international consensus on the Israel-Gaza conflict. It even called on the United Nations Security Council to hold an emergency meeting. Questions have been raised about the timing of the Hamas attack. It is being viewed in some quarters as an attempt to derail the Biden-led India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor. The corridor is in direct competition with China's Belt and Road Initiative. Like Russia's attack on Ukraine, the escalation in the Middle East is part of a global geopolitical transformation for which there is not yet a term. It certainly reveals the West's failure. So then, is this the emergence of the new world order that Xi and Putin espouse? With Srishti Shankar, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Now, 2 days after an explosion at a Gaza hospital killed hundreds, our Prime Minister spoke with the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas and reiterated India's position on the Palestinian cause. Now, while the Prime Minister expressed condolence for the loss of civilian lives as well as the deteriorating situation, he did not make any mention of the need for a stop or for a ceasefire. Hours after an explosion at a Gaza hospital killed hundreds, including children, Prime Minister Modi spoke with the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, condoling the loss of lives at the Al-Ahli hospital. He also reiterated India's long-standing position on the Palestinian cause and shared India's deep concern at the terrorism, violence and deteriorating security situation in the region.
We have reiterated our position in favor of direct negotiations for establishing a two-state solution. We have also expressed our concern at the civilian casualties and the humanitarian situation. We would urge the strict observance of international humanitarian law.
The statement is a reminder of the tightrope India has walked since 1992, when New Delhi established full diplomatic ties with Israel while continuing to support the Palestinian cause. India has maintained equidistant ties with both Israel and Palestine. And the Prime Minister was the first to go to both nations on independent state visits to Israel and then Palestine. Bibi and the Prime Minister share a special rapport that was on display back in 2017 when he visited Israel. Now, what complicates matters for India are the close ties it shares with the Arab world as well. While India has shared increasingly close bilateral relations, trade, technological assistance, military procurement and counter-terrorism cooperations with Israel, it also remains committed to the stance that this is not an era of war. India has been forthcoming in providing humanitarian aid to Afghanistan, even after the Taliban took over. And since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, India has sent humanitarian aid to Ukraine. And in a show of neutrality, India has abstained from successive votes in the UN Security Council, the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council that condemned Russian aggression. India has consistently urged respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states and called for the immediate cessation of violence and hostilities. It has reiterated that dialogue is the only answer to settling differences and disputes. In fact, the Prime Minister spoke to both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian Prime Minister Volodymyr Zelensky, as well as several other leaders to de-escalate the situation. The announcement of the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor at the G20 summit in New Delhi was the net result of India's growing global trust factor. The divide between Israel and the Arab world is starker now than ever before, with Iranian, Saudi and Jordanian leadership slamming Israel's bombardment in Palestine. Another big question is, what happens to the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor that's meant to challenge China's Belt and Road Initiative? Will India be able to leverage its ties with Arab nations to de-escalate the situation and bring the project back on track? These are the big questions. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV. In other news, Canada said it is withdrawing 41 diplomats from India, a fallout from a bitter row over India's alleged involvement in the killing of a Sikh terrorist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, on Canadian soil. Now, dozens of Canadian diplomats and their families have left India amid this ongoing row, as India plans to unethically revoke their diplomatic immunity. These are the words of the Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly. Only 21 officials have been left behind to man Canada's embassy and consulates in our country.
41 Canadian diplomats and their 42 dependents were in danger of having immunity stripped on an arbitrary date, and this would put their personal safety at risk. The safety of Canadians and of our diplomats is always my top concern. Given the implications of India's actions on the safety of our diplomats, we have facilitated their safe departure from India. This means that our diplomats and their families have now left.
Well, as you've heard, expressing apprehensions about revoking diplomatic immunity, Canada has said that doing so would be a violation of international law. But in response, India has said that actions implementing parity are not in violation of any law. In fact, in a strongly worded rebuttal, India has said the state of our bilateral relations, the much higher number of Canadian diplomats in India, and their continued interference in our internal affairs warrant a parity in mutual diplomatic presence in New Delhi and Ottawa. We have been engaged with the Canadian side on this over the last month in order to work out the details and modalities of its implementations. In fact, the MEA statement also adds, our actions in implementing this parity are fully consistent with Article 11.1 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. We reject any attempt to portray the implementation of parity as a violation of international norms. That's the response we have from the Government of India. Another big focus on India Global. A Pakistan court has granted bail to former Prime Minister and graft convict Nawaz Sharif, removing the threat of arrest when he returns to the country from self-imposed exile this weekend. After nearly 4 years in the United Kingdom, Nawaz Sharif is hoping to lead his Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, the PMLN, party through elections that are scheduled for January 2024. The court's decision allows him to return to his political heartland of Lahore for a welcome home rally, while his primary opponent, Imran Khan, languishes in jail. My colleague Munize Jahangir joins us for a quick update. We actually spoke earlier about the significance of the timing. But Munize, take us through the significance of the timing of Nawaz Sharif's return as we speak.
Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif, the leader of the Pakistan Muslim League N in Pakistan, will be returning back home after 4 long years of self-imposed exile. This is the first indication that elections may happen in Pakistan early next year. At the moment, the Election Commission of Pakistan has given no date for the elections. They've just given a month, which is the month of January. Whether elections are held in January or not, there is a big question mark because Maulana Fazlur Rahman, the leader of the JUIF, which has considerable control and is considerably popular in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, has said that it will be too cold for the voters to come out in his constituencies, in the constituencies that he feels he has a stronghold in the month of January and February, and he has spoken to other political leaders if elections can be further delayed. However, this is the first indication of Mia Nawaz Sharif returning that there might and there will be elections in Pakistan sooner. There will of course be political activity.
Right, but Munize, who's actually in control right now in Pakistan? And also, what could a change on political drift in Pakistan mean for us in India?
At the moment in Pakistan, though there is a caretaker government or a veneer of a caretaker government, it is believed that it is actually the military that is pulling its strings, and there has been a widespread political victimization of the PTI, and most people, even teachers, have not been allowed to protest, peacefully protest. Now, will the political space open up after Mia Nawaz Sharif returns? That is what is important. Regarding what it means for India, Mia Nawaz Sharif has always been seen as a friend of India, as somebody who has extended an olive branch to India, as somebody who wants trade relations with India. So if he is voted into power, it's likely that he is going to want to reopen those trade links again with India.
Munize, as always, thank you so much for joining us with the latest update from Dubai. And finally, the 9-day long festival of Navratri, which marks the victory of good over evil, is underway. One of the main highlights of Navratri celebrations is the traditional dance form Garba, which is a symbol of devotion and worship. Take a look at what happened in New York City's Waterline Square Park.
So first we're going to do this step by yourselves, individually, and then we're going to get in a big circle and do it all together. Clap. Put your arms down. So there's 2 counts. It's a clap and down. Clap and down.
I'm standing at the heart of New York City in Waterline Square Park, which has literally transformed into a little India. The Indian community here waits every year to celebrate Navratri with everyone, in which they bond over Garba and Dandiya.
What we're doing today will be Ras Garba and Dandiya, which are 2 dance traditions that come from the state of Gujarat. So we're going to be here doing a little tutorial and then dancing together with everyone and bringing a little bit of India to New York.
I love Navratri. It's 9 days long. There's so much celebration, especially through Garba and dancing, and I wanted to expose my kids to it, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity.
My children are Indian, and I had a Garba for my wedding, and I think this is an exciting way to celebrate their culture and for them to learn more about their culture.
My first time celebrating Navratri in New York, but growing up it was such a fun memory of Navratri at home with family. It's part of the Gujarati Samaj. New York creates an opportunity for new family, and I'm here celebrating with them today.
Navratri is largely a community event, but of late, non-profits such as the Culture Tree have taken the lead to get Indian Americans especially the Gujarati Indian Americans, together.
Navratri is such a big celebration in India, all over India. And unfortunately, we don't have as many celebrations for all the different aspects the way India celebrates Navratri. So this is an attempt to really recreate what happens in India, and specifically in Gujarat and Maharashtra through Ras Garba. So we are hoping that this becomes a tradition and we celebrate it every year.
I'm going to go join everyone playing Dandiya right now. This was Nandini Gupta reporting in New York for NDTV.
Well, that's all on this episode of India Global. Thank you for investing your time and watching. Goodbye.